Okay. Math quiz. Wednesday. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I'll be here Wednesday. It's next Wednesday.
And the other half of class, after we grade the math quizzes, we will grade them in class. And Andrew's gonna present. Okay. And Michael Johnson will be the next one as we get deeper in. As we get deeper into war, those of you that have presentations for your passion project, book review thing, you guys will present as your thing in history. Your topic comes up in class. Okay, good. Okay, so guys, Pearl Harbor just happened, right? And not only was Hawaii attacked, but the Philippines were attacked. Wake Island. Malaya was attacked, okay, and the Japanese would continue to push further and further out, creating their Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. Yes? Okay, so this is Module 20B, okay, and what's going to happen here, guys, is I just posted an assignment this morning. I don't know if you saw it.
Yes.
Okay, so if you did not get your desired grade on the test, there's another way to get some more points. Okay, I made that due, I think, Sunday night at midnight.
So it's optional.
Okay, it is optional.
Yes.
Okay. I think it's 5 questions worth 5 points each, something like that. I don't know, you have to look at it. I think it's 25 points, yeah. Okay. And again, guys, I try and choose some interesting topics to ask questions about, things that I don't cover really well or in detail in the lecture. Okay, so you'll learn something pretty interesting. Okay, while you're doing that. All right. Okay. So the Battle of the Atlantic. Ooh, look at that. This is what we learn in graduate school, people, right here. Okay.
That's where the business degree comes in.
Okay. No better way to start a new chapter than by quoting Winston Churchill. Okay. Now, let's understand where we're at. December 7th, 1941, correct? All right. So, are we ready for war? No. So, over the next year, the year of 1942, we do not accomplish a lot. We do rearm, and American troops will see their first combat in November, 11 months after Pearl Harbor. Okay? That's the first ground troops that will see action is November 8th of 1942. At the end of the year, Churchill comes to Washington, D.C. He addresses a joint session of the United States Congress. And he said these words. He said, "This is not the end. This is not the beginning of the end. But it is perhaps the end, the beginning." Okay? So, the end of the beginning, by the end of 1942, then it really ramps up. Okay? So, one of the main things we got to do is win this battle, the Battle of the Atlantic. We have to be able to get our supply lines across to Europe, to England, really. Okay? And German U-boats have been sinking our ships in alarming numbers, which really threatens these supply lines. In May of 1942 alone, 120 U.S. cargo ships were sunk. It's like 4 every day. Or wait, is that 30? No. 30 times 4 is 120, right? Yeah. It's like 4 a day. Okay. Now, we're not sending troops over yet, but we soon will be. And that means American troops being sunk on these ships is not a good thing. Okay? So where there's a will, there's a way. And again, this is why smart people are important. Okay, we got to figure out a way to win this battle. We're going to do it through invention. and the creation of sonar. So like radar, but this is sound navigation and ranging. Okay, done underwater. I know some of you have probably seen some submarine movies. We talked about a couple the other day. Hunt for Red October, U-571, probably the best World War II one that I can think of. Das Boot. Okay,
I watched that.
you did?
I watched it in German.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good movie. So guys, like this graphic here in my notes shows, which is pretty impressive.
Actually, a very good graphic.
You make
Yes.
this, you know,
You made it. You made it?
I did not make this. I don't know how to make that. But for some reason, I copied and pasted it into my notes like 15 years ago, and it still works.
well, you knew how to make the Battle of the Atlantic.
Oh,
Yeah, I did learn how to do that. Okay. And you got the thematic background here. I mean, it's a really well put together slide.
It is actually a very
Uh,
good slide.
These are German U-boats, okay? And so guys, these boats do have to surface from time to time. But if you can spot one of these submarines, now, could you mistaken a large sperm whale or blue whale for a submarine?
yeah.
You could, yes, and that's tragic, okay? Now, once we spot one of these things, how do we take it out?
Depth charges.
Usually people answer torpedoes, okay? Torpedoes are great, but you've got to be pretty accurate. If you use depth charges, then do you have to have a direct hit? Now, you guys have all been swimming in the deep end before, and you feel the pressure in your ears when you get down to about 10 feet, right? Guys, these subs could be hundreds of feet deep, okay? And so if the pressure is immense down there, so if you get an explosion at that depth, it can crack the hull of the submarine. And if you crack the hull of a submarine, what does that submarine have to do? Yeah, it's got to come to the surface. And a surface submarine is a sitting duck, yes? Or a lame duck, if you will. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever seen one of these depth charges before, but let me think of something comparable. You guys probably wouldn't know what that looked like.
Say,
You ever seen a keg of beer before?
yes.
I'm not sure what that is.
I work at a restaurant. What's nice?
I don't know. When I was in high school, we drank keggers, but you know.
Okay.
But anyhow, that was the 80s. So, and I know who I'm talking to here. So, listen, yeah, it's like a big keg of beer, okay? And you launch these things off the back of a destroyer, kind of like this, okay? And you launch a bunch of them off. That's from a video game.
Were you playing right there?
No, I was not playing. Okay. Now here's this depth charge here, and this is what it looks like on the surface after one of these things goes off underwater. And so you, like I said, you don't have to have a direct hit. So if you can get the submarine to the surface because you've cracked its hull, you're going to win that battle. Okay. This guy right here is doing some sub hunting. Okay, so they've located a submarine beneath the destroyer, and they're just launching a bunch of these depth charges. Okay, this method was quite successful. Okay, at taking out German U-boats. Now, another method that we used in conjunction with the destroyers was aircraft that were equipped with radar. Okay, now large parts of the ocean are pretty clear. Like you can see from the air into the water, like you can see under the water. But these things, this is a Pegasus. They had other ones that they used as well. But you know, if they were close to the land, you know, these could go out a couple hours into the ocean and then have to turn around and come back. Okay, so they were limited in that sense. They couldn't go to the middle of the ocean. But the conjunction with both the depth charges, the convoy system, using destroyers to protect these convoys, And then the air radar with these flying boats became quite effective. So I got a couple of videos that I want to show you on this. Here. See what happens when I click that. And let me click this one.
Yes, the video. Is it copyrighted?
It's on YouTube.
You could be pushing it. That's large. I think we need it one more time. Oh.
Yeah. So when you read the notes on this video, it actually they hit like a sunken barge. Okay.
Not a small one.
Yeah.
Black element. That was iron oxide.
An iron. I can't read. Oxide from shipwreck.
It looks like it did the job.
Yeah, it works. Okay. The next video, this one kind of shows the air power here.
Technology in the form of air-to-surface vessel radar was beginning to be utilized. By mid-1940, half of Coastal Command's patrol aircraft were thus equipped. Another effective long-range patrol flying boat entered the fight, the American PBY Catalina. Its primary missions was to destroy surface U-boats transiting through the Bay of Biscay. But even long-range Catalinas operating from Britain, North America, and Iceland could not provide cover for convoys in the mid-Atlantic. This gap was fully exploited by U-boats using wolf pack tactics, which decimated the convoys. By the end of 1942, losses had doubled to 5.5 million tons, or 1,000 ships sunk. Gradually, the gap was closed with the introduction and strength of very long-ranged Liberator aircraft. By 1943, the tide of war had turned against the U-boat, so that it was reduced from a predatory wolf to a hunted dog.
It's pretty good.
The Battle of the Atlantic was arguably the single most important one of the war. Had the U-boats won, Britain would not have been able to sustain war against Germany. And leading the fight against the U-boat had been the anti-submarine airplane.
Okay. Yeah, the Catalina. That's the Pegasus. Convoys. Okay. So, like I said, by the Battle of the Atlantic from mid-42 to mid-43, the height of it, like I said, we lost 4,600 merchant ships by the end of the war, and sunk 785 German U-boats. So, yes, this was a very successful, mission carried out by sea and air. Okay. Oops. Does anybody know where Michael is today?
Was it gas?
told him we would have him present around this time period. So he's talking about the development of the computer. Okay. And one of the first computers ever made was made about this time.
My mom boxes came into power 20 years early.
Apparently they required like 6 or something.
Hi.
You know about the Japanese sub battle we won?
I am not familiar.
Oh, there was a American destroyer that was about to ram a U.S. or a Japanese sub, because you can sink them that way as well.
Yeah.
But then when they were about to do it, they discovered they were like looking at, they were trying to identify the sub, and they're like, oh wait, if we hit this one, it might explode. So instead, they like stopped and then pulled up right next to it, but they were too close to use the guns they had on deck. So the men just went for the boxes that they thought would be like weapons or like grenades or anything. And it was potatoes. So they started throwing potatoes at the Japanese who were like sleeping on the surface of the sub. And the Japanese thought that they were grenades as well, so they would chuck them back. So they just kept chucking potatoes at each other, thinking they were grenades or weapons. And the destroyer gradually like backed up while they were doing it.
And we're able to shoot at them.
Yeah.
Okay.
The sub could have won if they were ignored the potatoes and then just went to the 50 cal on deck.
Right.
Instead, they threw back the potatoes, threw the potatoes back.
So that's kind of reminiscent of the Civil War. They had those grenades they called them Ketchum grenades, where when they hit on contact, it's like a plate that compresses and it explodes. Well, the other ships in the Civil War, they would like catch them with blankets. Like you'd be throwing these grenades at the other ship, and they'd catch them in blankets so they wouldn't blow up, and then they threw them back, and they blew up. Yeah, that's a good story. Okay, so remember when Churchill and Roosevelt met, became known as the Atlantic Charter. They met up in Canada. And they said, once the United States gets in this war, we'll deal with Europe first, okay, and the Pacific secondary. Well, guys, Stalin is now under attack by Germany as we speak during this time period, right? And so the war in the Eastern Front is going on big time. And Stalin is under a lot of pressure. And what he would really like us to do is open a front here in France to relieve pressure from Russia, so Germany would have to move forces back to France. Okay? But Churchill, talking to Roosevelt and Eisenhower, he says, this is a bad idea. You have American troops that have never seen combat, and you're going to throw them across the English Channel into the teeth of the German army. That's a bad idea. So Churchill convinced Roosevelt and Eisenhower, who I'll talk about the chain of command here in a little bit, that instead of opening a front in France, that we should go after what Churchill called the soft underbelly of the beast, which is North Africa and the Mediterranean here. Okay. Now, if you recall me talking about this, this is French Morocco, French Algiers. So this is under the puppet, the Vichy puppet government of France. So there are German troops there. There are French troops there taking orders from the Germans. Tunisia is controlled by the Italians, as is Libya, okay, who are part of the Axis powers. Egypt is under the control of the British. And the British have a lot of influence out here in the Middle East. So as the Germans begin to push this direction towards the Suez Canal, if the Germans take control of the Suez, they will control all traffic in and out of the Mediterranean. Okay? Now, we're not ready yet. Okay? The Americans aren't ready yet. But the British are here. Okay? And so what we're going to see is a major battle in North Africa here between the Germans and the British. All right. While that is taking place, American troops are going to land in November here at Casablanca, here at Oran, and here at Algiers. Okay, the U.S. First Army will land at these three spots. Okay, while the British are fighting the Germans here. So actually the first troops we're going to fight against in World War II are not going to be German or Japanese or Italian. They're going to be what? They're going to be French. Now, the French are not going to put up too stiff of a fight here, you understand? Not that they ever do. Okay? Resistance at Casablanca is very weak. Okay? Oran is a port city, so it's a little bit easier to defend. So about 2 weeks here and about 2 weeks here. Okay? So now, during this time, the British have been working feverishly to break the German code, which is known as Enigma. Okay, how many guys have seen the movie Imitation Game? Okay, that's it? Okay, it's on Netflix right now. In fact, I opened up Netflix last night and it came up on the big screen, like it was the one they were feeding me. Like, Imitation Game is now on Netflix. Okay, it's a great movie, and it's about a guy named Alan Turing. Okay, now Michael Johnson is going to speak to this, so I don't want to steal too much of his thunder. Okay, as you guys like to steal my thunder sometimes. Okay, so I'm not going to try and steal that from him, but basically, guys, this Enigma machine. Okay, and if Michael doesn't really get into this, the detail that I want him to, I'll come back to this if that's okay and explain how this thing works. But this code machine is extremely difficult to decipher, to break. Okay. And the movie Imitation Game really explains how they do that. It's well done. Now it's Hollywood, so Hollywood, you know, they have an agenda. Alan Turing was gay. Okay, this scientist, this computer scientist, I guess you'd call him, mathematician. And so that's a big side note of, part of this movie, which is okay. I mean, I don't care. But they make it kind of a big deal. So basically, you kind of have to reverse engineer here. And we needed to get our hands on some of these machines to try and figure it out, okay? But there are settings that go into this, and the chances of, it's a keyboard with numbers as well. The chances, so if you press the letter K on this machine, the letter J may show up. Okay, it's completely random. Like, it's easier to win the lottery, okay, than to break this machine. You know what I mean? It's like, so it took some really smart people. There's a place outside of London called Bletchley Park. Okay, and this is where they gathered some of the brightest minds in Europe, mostly British folk, but the brightest minds in the world to try and crack these codes. Okay, and yes, many of them were women. Okay, and so there's another pretty good show on Netflix. It's a TV series called Bletchley Park. Okay, and it's about these 5 women that helped break codes in World War II. And then after the war's over, like, which happened to a lot of women that had jobs during the war, now the men come back and take those jobs. And so these women are bored. And so in their spare time, they use their code breaking skills to solve murders. Okay. Huh? It's a good show. British television is way better than American television. It is. I mean, yeah. So anyhow, yeah, that's called Bletchley Park. It's a good show. Okay. All right. So let you kind of get what I'm getting after here. If we can control North Africa, okay, and the Mediterranean, we can invade Europe from the south. Okay. as well as open that front eventually, guys, in June of 44. Okay, it's, between Dunkirk and D-Day, basically 4 years. Okay, so the first Allied offensive here, okay, now the Germans in North Africa were under the command of General Erwin Rommel, known as the Desert Fox, okay? This is called the Afrika Corps for the Germans, the Afrika Corps. Africa with a K. This is tank warfare, all right? So you got German tanks here, okay? And they're about to enter into Egypt, okay? And try and take the Suez Canal, okay? Now, guys, when we talk about Erwin Rommel, if you're a military historian, okay, it's okay to talk about Robert E. Lee. It's okay to talk about Erwin Rommel. Yes, they were on the wrong side of history, okay? But we're still going to talk about it, okay? Rommel is identified by military historians as one of Germany's best generals, or one of the best generals of World War II. Adjectives like shrewd, daring, resourceful come to mind with Rommel. Now, Rommel was a pilot. And so when he was engaged with the British, he would fly his own plane over British positions to develop a plan of attack. So he's getting his own reconnaissance. He's flying the plane. He will land his plane, go back to headquarters, devise a plan of attack, and then carry it out, not from the rear, but from the front, with his men. You understand? So his soldiers had a great amount of respect for him because he didn't play it safe. He didn't stay in the rear. He went to the front. Okay? And so, great deal of respect. And if you look at his personally, Rommel is not some Jew-hating, anti-Semite, Nazi cheerleader. Okay? He's a soldier. He's a German soldier. Okay? And like Robert E. Lee, okay, who was very bold, was on the wrong side, but doesn't take away, talking about his military strategy and tactics, okay? So, Rommel has reached El Alamein here, 70 miles west of the Suez. The British are going to counterattack under the command of General Bernard Montgomery and the British 8th Army. Henceforth, General Bernard Montgomery will be referred to as Monty. Okay? So when I'm talking about Monty, I'm talking about Bernard Montgomery. Okay? Now, the operation to decode the Enigma, the German code machine, was called Ultra. Okay? The Russians want us to open a front here. Instead, we're going here. Okay? North Africa. Montgomery will counterattack on November 4th here at El Alamein. Okay? And what will ensue is a great battle between desert armies. Montgomery's going to get the best of Rommel. Now, part of this is not Rommel's fault. Where are the Germans fighting? Where is all the attention of Hitler at this point? It's in Stalingrad. So all the extra supplies, the extra fuel, tank parts, you need replacement parts, all kinds of things, munitions, that's all being funneled out to Stalingrad. So Rommel doesn't have the supplies he needs So he's doing what he can with what he's got. That's where the resourceful part comes in. And it's during this time that Rommel actually becomes very ill. He fights through that illness for a while, but eventually he's going to have to return back to Germany to receive some care. Okay? But he's begging Hitler for more supplies, and he's not getting the answer he wants. I got some pictures of these guys on the next slide. When you guys watched Pearl Harbor the day I was gone, did you finish the disc? Okay. So basically you watched it like up until they were like in the hospital giving blood and stuff like that? Okay. I'll probably show you another clip from that movie. Maybe tomorrow. We good here? Okay, so here's a pretty good map. Okay, so this is West North Africa, Northeast North Africa. Here's the Battle of El Alamein. Okay, the red is the Germans, the blue is the British. Okay, so this is November 5th. Okay, November 7th, November 9th, November 11th, November 13th, 15th, March. Okay, or no, November 20th. Okay, and then this is November 23rd through December 13th. So look. Montgomery is like winning and pushing the Germans back. Okay, this is great success. Okay, now we are supplying Monty with a lot of Sherman tanks to help in this battle. Okay, so you can see the British will start pushing them back. Okay, Libya's over here. Okay, towards Tunisia. Here's Tunisia on this map. So this is the east. This is the west. So that's November 4th. Okay, November 8th, the Americans land here, here, and here, as I told you before. Okay, we will face some Italians as well. They will not be long for this fight. Once the United States gets in this war, the Italians are not really sure they want to stay on Hitler's side. Okay, and just like history repeats itself, in World War I, Italy started on the Central Power side and switched to the Allied powers. Okay, here again, the Italians will drop from the Axis powers over to the Allied powers. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that. This is a picture of Monty. Okay, kind of looks British. He's got the beanie on. Okay, and this is a picture of the Desert Fox. Erwin Rommel. Now, in the notes here, guys, I have this deal. Okay, November 8th, huge Allied landing. Okay, it's going to be like a pincer. Okay, so the Americans coming from here, the British coming from here. We will pinch the Germans and capture them in Tunisia. Okay, but we've got to come back and finish this later because there's too many other things going on in 1942 that we got to go back and talk about, especially in the Pacific, before we finish this battle. Okay, so I will come back and finish this battle a little bit later. Okay, one thing I do want to point out that I will show a video on. I'll put those back up. Right here in Tunisia is a place called Kasserine, and there's a pass called Kasserine Pass here. This will be the first time we face off against the Germans. Is here in Tunisia. Okay, the American Army, First Army versus the German Afrika Corps. Okay, and it will not go well. And I'll show you a video over that. Okay. But we are going to win this battle in North Africa. Okay, it's a massive victory for the United States and for the Allies. Okay, for the British and the Americans. All right. So while I'm talking about Monty, and I got a picture of him up here, let's talk about him. Now, you have when we talk about the command structure. Obviously, the commander-in-chief for the United States is Roosevelt, right? The commander-in-chief for the British is the Prime Minister, Winston Churchill. The French, the French. Guys, they were a pain in the neck because once they surrendered in North Africa to the Allies, then they wanted to join forces. But Eisenhower, who's our top general in Europe, is having to deal with all these French generals coming up to him saying, hey, I want to lead the French troops. I want to lead the French troops. And really what Eisenhower wanted was for the French to just go away. Okay, and so they kind of caused a headache. So you've got your two big political leaders, and of course Stalin with the Soviet Union, who is now an ally. So you have the political leaders, then you have the military command. Okay, so in Europe, the supreme allied commander is going to be a Kansan, yes. Dwight Eisenhower is chosen by Roosevelt. Now, are there more experienced American generals? Yeah, there are. Why Eisenhower? Eisenhower is a people person. He gets along well with people. Now, what's interesting here is, guys, remember, the British have been fighting this war since 1939. We're getting in basically in 1942. So we're going to put an American in charge. Why are we putting an American in charge? We're going to supply more men than anybody else. For the Allies. Well, Russia will supply more men, but Russia's not fighting on the Western Front. Okay? So we're going to put American in charge. Now, this could really upset our British friends. So, Roosevelt and Eisenhower are going to cave. The Supreme Allied Commander of Expeditionary Forces is going to be Monty. Okay? This is an American. This is a Brit. Which means all ground forces controlled by Monty, a Brit. Which means American generals like Bradley, Patton, Hodges, and others report to Monty. And they don't like it a bit, especially Patton. Now, how many, raise your hand if you're familiar with George S. Patton? Okay. He's one of a kind. One of a kind, people. George S. Patton is an egomaniac. He believes in reincarnation. He believes he was reincarnated for this moment in history. He belongs here. He was put here. And he wants the glory. And he sure as hell doesn't want to share it with this snot-nosed Brit guy, Monty. So, guys, what you're going to see is a rivalry here between Monty and Patton. And this is going to pay big dividends in the long run. Although Patton is going to cause a lot of headaches for the man in charge, Eisenhower. Okay? So, that's an interesting part of the command structure there. And the bell's about to ring? Okay. I will pick up there Wednesday map quiz.